Hey everyone, today we're going to take a look at all the different classes in Crystal of Atlan. There are 5 main classes, each with their own playstyle, and they all have 2 subclasses with the exception of the mage class, which has 3 subclasses. You'll unlock the subclass missions at level 15, and then you can swap between them whenever you want, up until around level 45 when you complete your Awakening class mission, so you'll have a lot of time to choose what you want to play as. So first up we have the Musketeer class, which has 2 subclasses, that being the Bounty Hunter and the Gunner. So the Bounty Hunter will have a fast-paced and high-mobility playstyle with a heavy focus on chaining combos properly. Great for players who love an agile class. So we'll just go over some of the skills available for the Bounty Hunter. You'll have a skill that can send enemies airborne, another skill that fires a burning grenade, does large AoE damage, and then leaves the ground on fire to continually damage enemies. You got a higher mobility skill, does a quick slide, and also knocks enemies into the air. You have another skill that throws grenades in all directions and then does massive AoE damage. Another skill that lays mines on the ground, and then whenever enemies go near them it explodes, but they will explode after 10 seconds. You have the Spiral Cut skill that'll just help you group up enemies, and then you can hit your AoE damage skills after that. We have the Rain Down Fire skill, dual wielding guns rapidly fire for 5 seconds, so it's good for single target damage. Of the Rain of Destruction, continuously shoots from the right and left to gather enemies in a cone shape in front of you. Again, another way to help group up the enemies. Enchanted Twin Eagles, which looks pretty damn cool. It's almost like a turret, but it does damage in like a smaller AoE. Magic Cartridge changes the elemental type of your bullets. Got Pyro, Umbro, Cryo, and Electro, each doing different passive effects. Apocalypse, more another high mobility skill. Bunch of jumps and a bunch of AoE shots. Frostwind Bullet, another mobility skill. You'll leap backwards and then fire a freezing shot, which will slow enemies. And your Awakening skill, Domain Temporal Lockdown. Big damage, big AoE, like most of the ultimate skills. You got Eagle's Return, which you throw your guns. It latches onto an enemy, you can do it 3 times. Twilight Pursuit, which is the opposite of the Gathering. It shoots you towards your enemy. And then you got your Judgment Phantom, which is your ultimate finisher. Uses Gun Fu and just continuously attacks targets. Next up we got the Gunner, which has a little bit of a slower playstyle, but its attacks hit pretty hard. You'll be doing some crowd control and you'll have a little bit slower mobility and attack speed. Good for players who like a rinse and repeat playstyle. Got your Aerial Assault, use your firearm to launch enemies in the air. And then it switches your basic attack to melee, surprisingly. You have your Flame Burst, which is going to deal some scorching damage on the ground to continually damage enemies. You actually have a movement skill, which is a quick slide and knocks enemies into the air. Got Explosive Trigger, which is a finishing skill. 3 explosive bombs, pretty decent AoE, but it is only in front of you. High Explosive Landmine, just like the previous Bounty Hunter's landmines. Spiral Cut, which is a tiny AoE and then knocks enemies into the air. Anion Cannon, which is a big ass laser. Does medium armor break as well, and then it switches your basic attack to EM range mode after you use it. Got Explosive Hunt, and it fires 10 tracking grenades, which is pretty cool. Singularity Grenade, which is gonna again help group enemies up. Got Hyper Burn, which is a flamethrower, and then the cooldown's based on how long the skill is used for, which is kind of unique. Got Rampaging Barrage, it's a Gatling gun basically. Has 30 rounds initially, and then once you shoot all the shots, it enters cooldown. Bombardment is another AoE, and then after you use it, switches your basic attack to grenade mode. And then the Awakening finisher is a big ass bomb, basically just dropping a nuke on them. We've got Fiery Tour, you do a backflip, you surf on your weapon, which is probably the highest mobility skill that this class has. And it deals scorch damage on the ground, so it'll keep damaging enemies. Got Fission Particle Cannon, which deals different amount of damage based on your heat level from different percentages, 0 to 44, 45 to 89, and 90 to 100. And then your ultimate Awakening finisher. It is a big laser with an explosion at the end, although your heat level immediately rises to 100 and becomes locked for 10 seconds after, but you can cast it a second time. So the Swordsman is up next with 2 subclasses, the Magiblade and the Berserker. The Magiblade has some pretty fast-paced combat, and you'll not only be using Blade, but you also have spells for buffs. And you'll have to manage your cooldowns more so than other classes. It's great for players who like a dual playstyle. So going over the skills, we have the Upward Slash, which launches enemies into the air. We have the Crackling Strike, which quickly positions you in front of the enemy and then does a downward strike from the air. We've got the Blade Anchor, which pulls in enemies and helps grip them towards you. Wind Slash is your first finisher, which rushes around, slashes everybody up into the air, and then returns you to the starting position. We have the Channeled Arrow Blade, which has different damage based on how long you charge it for. You'll rush forward and just continually slash the enemy. We've got the Sword Tornado, which is pretty self-explanatory, generates a tornado to damage enemies. We've got Blade Dance, which is a big combo and sends enemies airborne at the end. We've got Blinding Silhouette, which basically just rushes through enemies forward, back, and then forward again, hitting them up into the air. We've got Unsheathed Sword Spirit, which is a pretty wide area of effect directly in front of you, and just continually knocks back enemies and hits them multiple times. We've got Crescent Blade, which is basically just your range attack. We've got Illusion Flash, which is kind of a mobility skill. Dash forward, dealing damage along the way. We've got Magic Imbuement, which will give your own attacks 15% extra magic damage for a limited amount of time, only 10 seconds at the first level. We've got Sword of High Determination, which is your finisher, does pretty good initial damage and then keeps damaging the area after that. We got Sword Mark, which marks an enemy, and then when you hit it again, you teleport next to them, sends them airborne, and does some armor break. And our last Ultra Awakening finisher, Formation Shattered Sun. Just a very large AoE, just some massive damage, a bunch of hits, 15 at the start, and then 1 at the end that does like a crazy amount of damage. Next up we got the Berserker, which is basically the opposite of the Magic Blade, trading all that speed for more power. High damage output, it's pretty tanky as well. A little bit slower though. Great for players who like to smash stuff with a big ass sword. Upward Slash does what it says, sends enemies upwards. We got the Crushing Blow, which is a leap forward, kind of like the Barbarian from Diablo 2, sends enemies airborne. We've got the Blade Anchor, which gathers enemies in front of you. Crimson Assault is your first finisher, you just dash around dealing damage. We got the Channeled Berserker Blade, which you can charge for more damage. It does a little bit of an AoE and a big smash at the end. Sword Tornado, which generates a tornado to deal damage, pretty self-explanatory. I believe the Magic Blade does that as well. We've got Annihilation, which is just a bunch of hits, and the last one deals medium armored break. We've got Earthquake, which is largely the same without the armor break, and a little bit more of an AoE at the end. We've got Condemnation Siphon, which is another gathering skill. We've got Savage Fury, which is a dash forward and deals multiple hits. We've got Crimson Slash, which is a really short range attack, deals 2 slashes, but if you're in the air, it only does 1 slash. We've got Army Breaker, which is another gathering one, except this time it deals a crap ton of damage as well. This continuously hits them. Hell's Destruction, which is your awakening finisher. Really high damage, reminds me of Excalibur from the Fate series. We got Blade of Annihilation, which does a few high damage slashes and then an AoE explosion at the end. We've got Final Cataclysm, which is your Ultra Awakening finisher. Does higher damage based on your rage, which the lower HP you'll have, the more rage you'll have, or fury, sorry, not rage. Cloud Strider has some ranged attacks, and you'll be doing a lot of aerial combat with this class. You have really high mobility, and you'll gain extra damage during aerial combat. Great for players who like a stylish gameplay. Your Soaring Fist is an uppercut that knocks enemies airborne. The Leopard Pounce dashes forward, dealing 2 hits if you hit an enemy during the dash. The Crushing Fist is a leap forward, dealing AoE damage. The Celestial Hurricane is a whirlwind kick that allows you to move around, just continuously dealing damage. The Heavenly Kick gathers enemies and knocks them into the air. The Swallow Step is a kick combo, dealing massive damage on the last hit with weak armor break effect. The Dragon Claw launches you forward, you grab an enemy, throw them, inflict medium armor break, and then when they land it deals AoE damage. The Summon Energy lets you change your Dharma state. There's Tiger, Crane, and then your regular one. The Blooming Palm does different things depending on which Dharma state you're in. Regular one's just your kind of like a ranged attack. Tire form fires 3 large balls continuously, and the Crane form pierces enemies. The Key Helix continually damages enemies as long as you're channeling it. The Tiger form has an explosion at the end, and the Crane form allows you to move around as you're channeling. The Body Formless launches you in the air and you do AoE damage. The Tiger form, you'll inflict bleeding debuff on enemies, and in the Crane form, you'll launch forward and continually kick enemies. Body Shapeless, you jump back and attack enemies. With the Tiger form, you can leap back forward and attack them, and in the Crane form, it'll allow you to jump back even farther and give your attack farther range. The Shadow Step will be a ranged attack in your default Dharma state. In the Tiger state, it'll have a high shield break effect at the end, and in the Crane form, it'll allow you to instantly teleport to your clone as soon as you hit the basic attack. The True Firefly's Light is your awakening finisher, just deals super high damage. The Mind Soul Divided allows you to knock the soul out of an enemy, so it's kind of like a stun, and then you deal damage to that soul and it gets transferred back to the main body. The Mind Desolation's another ranged ability. Default Dharma, you have to channel it, and the Tiger State changes just to a big ass slam, and in the Crane form allows you to move as you're using it, or after you use it. It'll stay in effect though. Your True Duality is your Ultra Awakening finisher. Does the same thing whatever form you're in, just the animations change and they all look pretty cool. Next up is the Starbreaker, which has more of a burst damage playstyle. You'll be generating energy and spending it with skill, so you'll want to focus more on timing and strategy, more so than the other classes. Good for players who like to really pay attention to optimize their damage. The Battering Ram knocks enemies airborne. Stellar Impact dashes forward, deals extra damage to enemies you hit during the dash. Morning Stars, just a basic AoE attack. Blazing Hurricanes, your first finisher, allows you to move around while spinning, dealing constant damage. The Blazing Kick allows you to launch enemies into the air. Fiery Flurry launches enemies into the air as well. Does a charged uppercut at the end, deals massive damage. Starfall launches you forward, hitting an enemy, then you grab them and throw them, dealing medium armor break, and when they land, deals AoE damage. The Sky Scorcher, you jump forward, dash forward, and slam down enemies, pretty basic. The Flaming Hook is an uppercut, and you can actually deal 2 instances of damage at a full charge, which will also inflict medium armor break. The Scarlet Comet, you can charge and deal damage 3 times. Deals massive damage at a full charge and also inflicts medium armor break. The Burn O Flames gathers enemies towards you, then you ignite and become flame-bound, and then you can deal extra pyro damage and then also scorch enemies. The Blazing Impact is a 3-hit combo. First hit has a weak armor break effect. The Burning Meteor, you dash forward and you grab an enemy, forming a throw that inflicts medium armor break effect. Looks a lot like the Primary Lotus from Naruto. The Hyperdrive Skyfall is your awakening finisher. You transform into a meteor and just smash the crap out of everybody. The Melting Blitz launches enemies airborne. You hold down, channel the skill, and it deals more combo hits to them before kicking them back down to the ground. The Fist Cannon is kind of a medium ranged melee attack. Fully charged, it does higher damage and then also inflicts medium armor break. The Hyperdrive Scorch Flare is your Ultra Awakening finisher. Keep punching the ground, dealing damage, and then causing massive explosion at the end, dealing big damage. So the Puppeteer's up next, and it also has 2 subclasses, that being the Scythe Guard and the Blade Maiden. So the Scythe Guard will be controlling the Marionette and playing a little more mindfully, almost like a support role, especially since you have some healing skills. Great for players who like to hang back a little bit. The Waltz swings your Marionette Scythe in a large area and gives you 1 new moon mark. The Scythe Swipe sends enemies airborne, deals multiple instances of damage, and gives you a moon mark. Projection throws a sickle forward, then both you and the Marionette dash forward and send enemies airborne. When you cast it midair, it has a grapple effect as well. Moonlit Ultimate Blossoming is your finishing move. Slams the Scythe into the ground, deals massive damage, gives you a moon mark, a new moon mark, and a full moon mark. Moonlit Seer does multiple instances of damage directly in front of you. The Runic Barrier creates a shield of energy, protects allies, increases their damage res, and then when it breaks, it repels enemies. Rhapsody is your gathering skill, also deals pretty good damage, grants you 1 new moon mark. Whirlwind Scythe throws your scythe forward, deals continuous damage, grants you a full moon mark. Flurry deals damage, launches enemies into the air, and then smashes them back down, gives you a new moon mark. Photon Blast summons your sickle from the air, does small AoE damage. Ancient Echoes summons a giant marionette, either in new moon or full moon form, which you can select as you're casting a skill. New moon form deals high damage to enemies. New moon form, it deals high damage to enemies after a short delay, and in full moon form, field is generated around the marionette, constantly healing allies. Whirling Leap, you jump on the marionette's back and constantly deal damage as you steer it around. Gift of the Ancient Judgment is your awakening finisher. Soul Link links the souls of all enemies in the area that you cast it in. Dealing damage to one enemy will damage the other one. Arclight Cross is a large AoE that goes directly in front of you. And Mistmoon Calling is your Ultra Awakening finisher. Summons 2 marionettes, causes lots of explosions, generates Mistmoon crystals, which when you pick them up will grant you the Mistmoon mark. Apply the Calling buff to yourself and your teammates and grants you additional bonus damage. Blade Maiden's next up and has some really good damage output, but you'll have to focus on positioning your marionette properly so the skills can hit enemies. More fast-paced and strategic than other classes. Great for players who like to really dial in to deal massive damage. Waltz is a AoE attack. Onslaught will send enemies airborne and hit them multiple times. Projection, your marionette will throw their scythe and then charge forward. Thunderblaze Ultimate Blossoming is your first finisher. Thunder Seer just hits the enemies multiple times. Runic Barrier deploys a shield to protect allies, gives them damage resist, and when it bursts will also repel enemies. Rhapsody gathers enemies up and then deals big damage at the end. Blade Frenzy deals multiple attacks directly ahead and then knocks back the enemies. Surging Thunder generates an electric core that deals damage continuously to enemies that are standing in it. Overload generates electromagnetic energy in the body, increasing electro damage. Thunder Warp lets you swap positions with your marionette real quickly, dealing damage to enemies along the way. Electromagnetic Pulse is kind of a range attack, deals damage over time to any enemies standing in it. And then Armor Break will accumulate during the skill, but it caps out at medium Armor Break. Gravitational Spin will allow you to throw a boomerang between you and your marionette. Lasts for up to 30 seconds and up to 15 bounces. Just continuously deals damage. Magnetism Retribution is your awakening finisher. Summons a chain to trap enemies within a wide range. Does really good damage. Magnetic Force Field will deal damage while also gathering enemies in the middle of it. Whirlwind Dance, you'll throw your marionette, which will deal damage over time. You can cast it again to adjust the position as well. Armor Breaking effect can also accumulate during the skill and cap that medium armor break. And then you have your Ultra Awakening finisher, which transforms you into the marionette and just continuously attacks enemies, dealing really good damage. Last up, we have my personal favorite. It is the Magister class, and it has 3 subclasses actually. But the Elementalist, the Warlock, and the Magician. So the Elementalist will have you fighting with the ranged AoE playstyle. You have some good mobility, great AoE damage, and the ability to lower cooldowns. Great for players who like to deal with crowds really quick. First we have the Icy Thrust, which summons icicles, deals repeated damage against an enemy. Lightning Blade dashes forward and deals damage. Vortex, you'll throw a vortex, which will pull enemies in and continuously damage them while moving around. Really good at gathering them up. Arcane Inferno is your first finisher. You'll transform into a tornado that you can steer around, constantly dealing damage. Void Spear will gather enemies, push them back, and then deal weak armor effect break at the end. Anti-Gravity Arc will launch enemies into the air and gather them up before slamming them into the ground, deals weak armor break effect. Thunderbolt Bird summons 2 birds that constantly deal lightning damage that inflicts slow at the end. Punishing Frost deals targeted AoE damage over time, and if you're charging it, it extends the duration. Lord of Thunder generates 6 Thunder Cores, and you gain Lord of Thunder for 12 seconds. And then during that 12 seconds, you can generate more Thunder Cores attacking enemies. Falling Stars summons a meteor that deals large AoE damage. Ionic Barrier is going to be a personal shield that can absorb damage. Mana Surge will knock back enemies to help you if you get surrounded. Spiritual Harness Thunder gathers up enemies, deals damage to them, and inflicts weak armor break. Arcane Primordial Implosion is your first awakening finisher, deals massive damage. Looks really cool as well. Lava Eruption deals like an inverse cone-shaped AoE in front of you. Thunder Core Conversion, after the charge up process or during the charge up process, it generates Thunder Cores, and then different amount of Thunder Cores that you have does different effects. 0 to 2 is a small thundercloud, 3 to 5 medium, and then 6 or more is large. So you really want to save up your Thunder Cores when you do this attack. Your Arcane Planetary Annihilation, sounds cool as hell, is your Ultra Awakening finisher, and it summons a galaxy. Looks really cool. Deals big damage at the start and then a bunch of smaller damage at the end. 13 hits in total. Next up we got the Warlock, which is what I'm currently playing as. And it's surprisingly like a close range fighter. Close to mid-range. Landing debuffs that you can detonate, transform for some crazy damage. Good burst damage while requiring timing management. Great for players who like to time massive damage bursts. Magic Feathers summons a bunch of projectiles. Sinister Blade is a 2-hit combo. Dark Vortex gathers up enemies and damages them as it moves around. Your finisher is Forbidden Obliteration, which you'll control a tornado that continuously damages enemies. Shadow Orb summons an orb that'll explode when hitting an enemy, and it has 2 charges. Soul Banishment will launch enemies airborne, slowly gather them, and then slam them into the ground. Corrupted Crows will summon a bunch of crows that continuously damage an enemy, inflict slow, and then stack 1 resentful curse. Demon Mark Burst will cause all the resentful curses on the enemy to explode, dealing damage. Deals higher damage the more curses that they have. If they have 5 curses, then they get an exhausted debuff after the explosion. Gift of the Raven will have you launch backwards and then summon some ravens in your place, which continuously damage the target. Applies up to 4 stacks of resentful curse as well. Dim Soul Blast just launches everybody up into the air. Gateway of Darkness summons like a black hole basically after a little bit of channeling, continuously deals damage to targets and inflicts resentful curse on them after deploying it and then after it detonates. Harvest Soul have you enter the soul capture state, which all your damage inflicts leech. Hand of Calamity gathers up enemies towards you, damages them, and then launches them into the air. Forbidden Dark Knight Apostle, the coolest awakening finisher skill yet. Transforms you, resets the cooldown of Demon Mark Burst, and then you'll get an enhanced basic attack for 15 seconds. So Demon Mark Burst will deal double damage, you'll gain increased attack speed, and then you'll be applying resentful curses just constantly. You can cast the skill again when you're transformed, it'll deal massive damage based off resentful curses. Just really cool. Styxian Illusion will knock down enemies, which will constantly deal damage to them if they stay in that area. It'll be inflicting resentful curses as well. Chaos Tide is a wide-ranged in front of you attack, deals multiple instances of damage, and then it also applies a bunch of resentful curses. Finally, you got your Ultra Awakening, Forbidden Dark Flame Catastrophe. Sounds freaking awesome. Traps enemies in a field and then deals damage over time. Every hit applies resentful curse as well, so you'll be hitting the max stacks and detonating them a bunch. And then at the end of the skill, it deals massive damage. And then finally we got the Magician, who's more of a support unit. You'll be crowd controlling enemies with debuffs, and you can even turn invisible. You'll be buffing, so you're much more of a team player than the other classes. So it's great for players who like to play with a team. Magician's Gift, you'll jump and deal cone-shaped damage in front of you. Spinning Top, you'll transform your hat into a spinning top, and it'll automatically seek out enemies and damage them. Phantom Stride will have you dash forward, dealing 2 hits. Ledger Domain Ace Hurricane is that same tornado that the other subclasses have. Bouncing Magic Ball, you'll throw 3 balls that get bigger and bigger as they roll, dealing damage ahead of them. Grand Reception is a 2-hit combo, sends enemies airborne. Swarm of Bats attacks the enemy after a short delay and sends them airborne, and then it has a weak armor break effect as well. Body Double creates a body double for you, lets you go invisible. As soon as you use a skill, it'll break invisibility, but you can move around and use basic attacks. Body Double can only survive for up to 8 seconds though. We have Ephemeral Quartet that creates a barrier around you and then sends bubbles out, dealing constant damage to enemies. Shapeshift Magic sends enemies airborne and transforms the enemies into rabbits. Has a weak armor break effect as well, so it's kind of like a stun for 3 seconds. Scary Doll, you'll launch backwards, substituting your original position with a doll that attracts enemies. Levitation Magic deals damage over time in a circular area. Stage of Malice deals heavy damage to enemies directly in front of you. Ledger Domain Bleak Illusion is your awakening finisher, deals massive damage to nearby enemies. Everlasting Dream inflicts sleep on enemies for 3 seconds and also damages them. Blazing Trick summons some sparks, and when they hit enemies, they burst into fire, dealing damage over time. And then finally, we have your Ultra Awakening finishing skill, Ledger Domain Wonderful Legend. Enters the Stage Frenzy state for 30 seconds. Your basic attacks become ranged, and then all type attacks will deal additional damage. And then when the transformation ends, deals damage once more. It's basically just another transformation. And yeah, that is all of the subclasses in the game. So hopefully this helps you find which one you want to play as, because they all have pretty different play styles. Whether you want to hang back, be a puppeteer or a gunner, get right up in their face as a berserker or a warlock, or play more of a support role, there'll be a class for your playstyle. So hopefully this video helped everybody, and I'll catch you next time. See ya.